Director Lopez, roll call, please.
Mr. Chair. Commissioner Bolin?
Present.
Commissioner Leonard?
Present.
Commissioner Bacon?
Present.
Yeah. Chairman Helby?
Present.
And then Commissioner Duran isn't here yet, and then Commissioner Al Metcalf. So they were supposed to be here, but maybe they're running a little later. So, but we have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Okay. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from June 7th.
I move we approve the minutes from June 7th.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, new business. First item of new business, Cool PZ 230313. Proposed zoning text amendment to the City of Coolidge zoning code. Article 13, Table A, changing the minimum parking dimension standard width from 10 feet to 9 feet and adding a van accessible parking space for every 6 accessible parking spaces within a 5-foot access, with a 5-foot access aisle. Director Lopez, please.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, as we talked last time, we were going through and updating some of the code where we feel that there's, so we brought these first three to you tonight, and we'll be bringing the other additional ones once we get more information, and we have our legal team look at that on some of the others that we talked about. But this is really more of a correction where we're going from 10 to 9 feet. We've been using 9 for a long time, and so have the other cities around us. So all we're doing is bringing it in line with what's standard practice throughout. And then we're making a correction on the accessibility one that with the IBC. And because we noticed there was a discrepancy there when we were reviewing one of our projects. So all we're doing is just making it align with there's an attachment that comes in that we talked to our building official on that really directs us on how we apply the accessibility spaces. And so all this does is make it that clarifies basically that of every 6 required accessible spaces, there's one of them that's for a van accessibility. And there's two different types, but they both equal 16 feet. One is a 5-foot width requirement on the aisle, and the other one can be an 8-foot wide with an 8-foot wide sidewalk. Yeah, so that's how. But that's all this is just bringing it up to date on applying the standards. And I'll answer anything. Phil, do you want to add anything to that? Or?
No, just to call out the changes to the table are basically under the standard width there for the 9 feet. And then a further clarification under subtext reference number 3 there for the 5-foot access aisle. So.
And we went over these with City Manager Miller, who we go through some of these projects, and he helps with on some of the reviews. And if we get where we were tight on spaces, we started talking about the widths and what we required, and so. Again, this is a minimum. If they want to go bigger than that, they can. It's obvious. But Phil, this falls in line with all the surrounding cities, right?
Yes, we researched it actually 6 months ago, so we've had a lot of time to look at it. So.
And so we'll answer any questions you may have either before or after the public hearing. So
I have no questions.
Mr. Chair, Director, I just want to make sure I heard. The requirements currently says 10 feet,
right.
and projects that are approved, are they getting a variance to be at the 9 feet? Or maybe I misunderstood what you were saying, that projects have been approved with 9 feet because they've requested a variance?
No, they go through it was one of those things where we were applying 9 feet because on staff side, we've always applied 9 feet. So we didn't realize that the code was 10 because everything else is 9. So they didn't apply for variance. So this would help us fix that issue. But some of it we missed, others we said, look, this, we've been using 9 feet, but we shouldn't. We should be using, we need to change the code or else enforce everything at 10, which wouldn't be in line with everything else. So it was on our part that we caught this and we decided to bring it to you and change.
So, and that probably leads to my question, which is, if we left it at 10, the applicant still has the ability to go through and request a variance
Yeah,
code.
yeah, but they could if we don't change it. But then it would require wider aisles than what's the width and what's standard in the industry. So
Well, I appreciate what's standard in the industry, but I also know this is Coolidge. And for example, I go to Safeway. There aren't a lot of small cars and things like that. And my backstory on this, I recognize there are projects that need. But this came up, Gilbert, for example, and it came up not because I thought it was a good idea, but because the developer for Santan Mall wanted more retail, and the way he got it was to convince that town to make parking spots narrower in the nation's SUV capital. So with that being said, I appreciate what staff's coming up with. I'm a little concerned, to be quite honest, that we have a code that said 10, but we've been applying 9, and I do appreciate where we're trying to correct it. I'm not certain that, anyway, if there's an opportunity, if this doesn't move forward, which maybe have it, but I appreciate you answering the question.
yeah. So it's something we just wanted to bring up to date to be in line with the other cities since we're competing with everybody. So if we were wider and then we don't have compact car spaces, which other cities do, we thought about adding that, and because that also provides more spaces like at the Marriott. So we left it. We figured we'd go to 9, and that would be adequate this time to help us with things as they come in. A lot of site plans have been approved.
I think that, the subcompact car parking would probably be a good solution to that. Right?
Sure.
Mr. Chairman?
I did, one second real quick. I did, however, I researched how wide an Escalade was,
Oh, yeah.
7 foot without the doors open. So with the door open, you only have a foot before you're into the next car next to you at 9 foot.
Yep.
So the question, Mr. Chairman, is how do we get in and out of these cars? My car is a normal car, and it's probably 6.5 feet wide, and I can't get in and out of my car unless I can open the door all the way. Maybe because I'm old, but so is a lot of other people. The fact is, every one of us are going to get older. I can guarantee that, or you're going to die, one or the other. So is it really something that we should be reducing, or should we demand a 10-foot unless they get a variance?
No, well, in our opinion, I think we don't want to be more difficult to put in retail and other things than some of the competing cities. And if the standard is 9 feet, that's what we're trying to just become at the same standard as they are, or else,
I think that if you offered subcompact parking as well as standard 10-foot parking aisles, you could accommodate both,
yeah,
right?
because you wouldn't qualify
They would get more parking with the subcompact than they would getting 1 foot off of each stall.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Chair, on a variance, as Mr. Boland, you can't have a self-imposed hardship on a variance. Sometimes those get issued, but state law requires that because the code says 10 and you want a variance, there has to be a special issue with the property that doesn't allow that. So you can't just say, well, the code's 10, but I want 9, so I'm going to apply for variance. The council may issue it, but it's really has to be an issue with the land or something that qualifies for a variance. And Nick, is that correct? Yeah. So we explain that every time we have a variance up to make sure. And the mayor always asks, does this meet all the requirements of the ARS statute? And yes or no, or whatever, and give them the information. So, but we're recommending a 9 foot. It's up to you whether if you don't want to approve that, then we still going to go to council. We're going to ask them to go for 9 foot. But it's your right to vote the way you feel needs to be done. So,
But if you go to our local box stores, that have, I don't know, I've not measured their width, but I know they are somewhat narrow. And then if you go to some of the bigger box stores in Phoenix that, one might be Costco, for instance, they always have an extra space. It's much easier to get in and out of your car at a Costco than it is probably any other chain of stores that
Right.
I know about. Because I can open that door completely, because they leave a 2 foot or 18-inch space between every stall. And it makes it nice. Makes it easier to load your car, too.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is just a minimum standard, so.
Right.
You know, a business can decide, like Costco, to have larger parking spaces, and that may be one of their selling points, you know, because, or Bass Pro Shop, most of the trucks, people go there, I drive my Avalanche there, and there's a lot of trucks. And so I like the, you know, I think they make the stalls for that, whatever Mesa requires or Glendale. But this is just in line with those cities, so.
But no business is going to want to reduce the number of parking spaces by making them extra large in most cases.
Yeah.
Costco being the one exception that I know of off the top of my head. I'm sure there's other ones, but most of the shopping centers you see or shopping areas you see, those parking spaces are as narrow as they can legally be, I believe, because they get more parking spaces. I mean, in my own shop in town, I have 16 parking spaces, which means I cannot operate another business in there with enough parking to make it reasonable for someone to do that. So I have, half of my building is unusable because I can't fit the parking, which is too bad, but, you know. So I don't, you know, again, is it really necessary that we reduce it? I mean, yes, we're letting them do it anyhow, but should they be doing it, is the question? Or should we be insisting that they have a wider space for the convenience of the population? And that's what we represent here, is the population, not the stores.
Right. Yeah, no, it was, and I shouldn't say it was something we were doing knowingly. We just overlooked it in that we were doing site plan and doing all that stuff. So our intent is to correct, but if the point is to go 10 feet from now on, you know, we can try to do that. I know it would impact like Liz South's project and a whole bunch of others where we're trying to develop some properties and you know, it wouldn't work. So when you get to small land infill stuff, it becomes more critical. Not Safeway, not Walmart, not all those. But trying to build things on these lots.
Mr. Chair.
Trying to.
Gilbert, Director, so, okay, since you brought that up, it caused me to have another question. Are we truly solving the problem?
Yes, in my opinion, we are.
But you just brought up the fact that if we don't do this, does that somehow impact projects that have already been approved?
No, they're approved and we worked out we had to cut out some sidewalk and some other things. So we made the projects work. But it's as we go forward and we're looking at more projects and we're looking at some existing projects that are redevelopment projects. I guess we could just leave the parking alone and not restripe it and say, use what you got because we're grandfathered in, because if not, you got to lose all these spaces because now you're going 10 feet. I mean, that would be the alternative on how we deal with because they're not going to want to lose.
Okay.
There's some stuff we're working on that's older and we're trying to make it work. I mean, we could be like, I think like Florence was, where people were like, they won't work with you, so they left and they come here. Anyway, it's.
I appreciate the narrative. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't hearing something new. So, okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, similar to what Gilbert was saying, I'm sure Ken gets a lot of commercial inquiries too up and down Arizona Boulevard. But I was going to suggest that sometimes we have like the overlay districts, and that's generally geared towards the use. Well, this is a bulk standard, and this is like the use for the overlays. It's a redevelopment type of incentive, as is similar to this. Most of the stuff that's going to happen, it'd be great if the really big shopping center east of town was ever going to go in and stuff, but that was put in place a long time ago. Things have changed. Amazon exists. So most of the stuff that's going to happen, or the inquiries that I get, and I get sometimes 4, 5, 6 a week sometimes up and down Arizona Boulevard, is asking about the potential infill redevelopment sites some of the existing buildings, and even with the buildings, if it's not even a raw land site, makes it difficult for the clients and their architects to figure out exactly how to lay out a site plan, and the parking could be very important to that. But one other thing I'd like to say too is that it's 1 foot. Ken mentions that he's got 16 different parking spaces. A lot of the things up and down the boulevard are a little bit smaller than that, depending on how many parcels they could assemble or what's available for sale, is that this would allow for the flexibility of that, but it's not necessarily going to be the wild swing of like 40 or 50 less stalls on such a large development like that. Most of what we're going to have until something big does come, which would be great and stuff, is going to be of this smaller nature. This is where this would incrementally help it from sort of a redevelopment bulk standard, the way that the overlays from a use standard help it from a redevelopment incentive as well too. So it's just food for thought. So
Thank you. Any more? All right. We'll open it to, this is a public hearing, right? So we'll open it to the public. No takers? Entertain a motion?
First, close it to the public.
Oh, yep. No, well, no takers. We'll close the public hearing.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just real quick, I want to, just so the record reflects that Commissioner Metcalf is present now.
Yes, so how do we handle that?
He's present, he's permitted to vote.
He can vote as well?
Yeah, what we do on the minutes is say Commissioner Metcalf joined the meeting at this,
Okay.
and then he's shown when he
Do we
walked
need
in.
to brief him?
No,
No?
I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
I read it already.
Yeah.
All righty. Perfect. Then we'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve Cool PZ 23-03-13.
All in favor? Or can I get a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nay?
I'll be, for the record, I'll be a nay. And Mr. Chair, if I might, I appreciate what staff's trying to do, and I know we've had projects, but I will say this lovingly but lightly, I'm not convinced when we say things like what others are doing and what others may or may not be happening. This city has been very good about being flexible with projects and a whole lot of things. And so, again, it's not adverse to parking or retail, but we're in a community where most folks are driving vehicles that are larger than what's in a lot of other places. So with that, I vote no and appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Likewise, I drive big vehicles. I'm looking at buying a new car. They want $160,000 for it. I don't want it door dinged. I'd appreciate a wider spot.
Yeah, so Commissioner Bacon, your vote?
Yes.
Yes, yeah. So Mr. Boland's yes, Commissioner Leonard's no, Commissioner Metcalf yes, Chairman Halby no, and Commissioner Bacon yes. So the motion passes.
Yep. All right. Motion passed. Next item up for business, Cool PZ 230621. Proposed zoning text amendment to the City of Coolidge zoning code, Articles 6, Section 601D, 602D, and 603D, adding churches as a conditional use permit allowance within the neighborhood business zoning C1, general business C2, and general service C3 zoning district.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this item has come up through some of the pastors that want to put in churches in different places, and they have a hard time finding a good spot. And then we always tell them, you can't have it in commercial. And then we're like, why not? You know, we don't, we're mid on weekends, and we don't take up any parking spaces from, you notice around town, we do have some churches in, some were actually done through a think a CUP back, it's a long time ago. We have one on Main Street that's approved, we know, but there's some others that kind of snuck in. But one of the pastors is trying to do it right. He came up and said, I want to rent this building. It's in a commercial area. There's no way to, and they said, well, and again, getting to, we don't, what everybody else is doing, but back when I worked in Chandler and Glendale, I started seeing where churches were allowed in commercial areas because they usually, the parking, like on a Sunday morning or Sundays, if that's when they meet, isn't being utilized as it's intended. It's not full. So there's a lot of space, and it doesn't bother anybody if it's in the right place, and there's no, depends on the use. So all this does, it allows the churches to be able to apply for a conditional use in any C1, C2, and C3 business district. So, like in Safeway Plaza, somebody wanted to put in a church there. Right now, the code doesn't allow them to do that. So they could rent a suite, put a small church, or do a couple, and then, whenever they meet as a church, they could do that. We'd bring it to you as a conditional use, and then you decide if we had opposition or not, and if it's a good use for that property, and all the things we do with conditional uses. So we thought it was a good opportunity to kind of open it up a little bit and allow the churches to at least have an opportunity to go in some of these, an empty building or something that's in a conditional use. Pastor Anthony is the one that approached us on this, so I can use him. Who asked? Anyway, yeah, and he's got food bank, a bunch. He does a lot of things. So, and he's not the only one. I'm just mentioning him as a potential applicant, and he's inquiring about it. I'm surprised he's not here. He thought he'd be here, rooting for it, but he must have got tied up. I think we told him it was tonight, right?
Yeah, we did.
Okay, yeah. Surprised he's not here. So anyway, that's the explanation I have for that. If you have some questions, but we also feel, I think we've seen that around other communities.
Yes.
We didn't used to allow it when I worked for the city of Chandler. I was in planning, and then I've seen them now driving through town, and they're in different sites, and I'm going, okay, well, the city's, and I know, has made some changes and kind of updated it. I don't know why originally I do know originally why they weren't allowed. Some years back, there were some cases where a church would open in the middle of a commercial district with restaurants and everything around, with the intent of saying, we're at church now, you can't serve alcohol around us. So the law was changed was entertainment districts, which we've passed. And Glendale did the same thing where I worked before, and basically so they can coexist together basically without there being an issue. And as long as you pass the entertainment district, and the whole boulevard is, and I think the downtown central area is. So it's changed. So now that worry is gone for the businesses. Sometimes they said, whoa, wait a minute, you're letting the church go in, it's going to shut down my operation and be an issue because there are distance requirements from churches for alcohol sales, I think, right? Yeah. So the law now is clearer. You could do the entertainment district, and it's not an issue with the church locating close to a restaurant that sells alcohol. So that's kind of the explanation of the change.
Okay.
Okay.
Any discussion? No? All right. This is also a public hearing, so we'll again open it to the public. No takers. We'll close the public hearing. Entertain a motion.
I'll motion to approve Cool PZ 230621.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Last item on the list, Cool PZ 230622, proposed subdivision text amendment to the City of Coolidge Subdivision Code, Article 3, Section 3-5, F, change preliminary plat extension period from a 6-month extension period to a 1-year extension period, as authorized by the city manager or their designated assignee. Director Lopez.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, as you notice, the economy's kind of slowed a little bit, and there's a huge increase in cost of infrastructure. So it's delayed a lot of developments. And so they're having a harder time finding developer and financing projects. And so it's slowed down. But one thing we know is in the past even, some of these developments were having a difficult time meeting the deadlines. So what happens is after they invested all this money in the preliminary plat and everything, then they have to come back after they run out of time and spend all that money again with re-engineering the project and bringing the, and resubmitting everything. So all we're doing is just really basically giving them a little more time to get, that taken care of. Hopefully it helps with some of the developments we're working on, Skousen East, Skousen West. Skousen West.
East.
Yeah,
Well, it's a little bit of both,
Yeah.
but the official name is Skousen.
that's one to the north, right? And then it's around the area of Cross Creek in that area. So we're working with the Peterson Group on one, just to mention one, and some of the cost escalations were just so extreme. It was going to take more time to get some of the financing. Hopefully the costs are starting to come down a little bit. So we're hoping a change like this will help us give them time if it's reasonable, and then hopefully they'll be able to get somebody on board to develop that, put the infrastructure in and everything else. Phil, do you have anything to add to that?
Nope, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, it seems like they're very interested in getting some of the final plats in, but obviously there's a lot of product out there from some of the land use documents that are feeding into the preliminary plats and things. So there's a definite need for this as well, but there's a commitment to also following through the final plats. So this should be a good proposal for that.
It's kind of a happy medium. I thought a little more time would work, but then you go too much, then it's, you're just, so we came up with a year instead of 6 months, and hopefully that'll help with this. So we thought a change was warranted. So we're bringing it to you for consideration and approval. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
The plats that they're currently building on the west side of town, which would be Heartland 1.
Yes.
Heartland 3, I believe, is the number.
Yeah.
That was dormant for 15 years.
Right.
I don't remember them coming back in to get that plat reapproved because it had already been approved. So
Yes.
they went ahead and they could just go ahead and build using the old plat as they did in Boccaccio Crossing over off of Boccaccio and Martin Road.
Yes.
So why did they get to do that if we have a 6-month program that says after 6 months they've got to redo the plat?
Because it was finalized and recorded. And so legally it had legal standing. You can't take it away from them.
So
Or else you'll
how
face
does this
a-
take effect?
Yeah.
So what we're propose or what staff is proposing is for the pre-plat. So they come in, get a pre-plat approval that allows them to go get their engineer the specifics, then they have to come back and council will approve the final plat. Once the final plat is recorded, then that will stay until they develop it. And so that's why all these, I think they used to call them zombie developments, started out of nowhere going straight up, is because they had final plats recorded. A lot of those companies went bankrupt or they sold off the subdivisions, but the plats were already recorded.
It seems like to me, okay, we've got a preliminary plat that was approved by this organization, and then that final plat, does that come back before us again? Or have we only going to approve it one time at the preliminary, so we really don't know what's going on?
It'll go after, when they submit their final plat, that goes to the city council.
It doesn't come to us at all. So they could change anything they wanted basically from what we had been told and do something totally different, and that would be okay.
No, because you have to certify that the final plat matches the preliminary plat. So that's on the actual final plat. So if they're going to change the plat, they have to come back to you. And I believe that's the process. Yeah, they'd have to come back and change.
I mean, we did that on Landmark Ranch over on Martin Road,
Right.
where they redid their plats, be changing them for roads and et cetera.
Yeah, they did some corrections and they widened the road. And we like that. They didn't have to. So they could have, the ones, Landmark 2, 3, and 4 could have gone ahead. They were already recorded. But Walton International wanted to make some corrections on the lots and then change the street widths to comply. And so they did some good things to add a 1-foot utility, non-vehicular easement on part of it. So I remember some of the things we did. They didn't have to do that, but they did it because they wanted to change a few minor things. But basically it stayed the same. But they didn't have to do that, but they did. So we welcome that.
Is there any moonlight clause on a recorded plat? So in other words, if I record a plat today, 30 years from now, that same plat is approvable and can move forward once I put in building permits on that plat, correct?
Unless state law changes or something else changes that would prevent that, or the fact that you have to prove that you have the water. Maybe that could be an issue because that's part of the requirement for recording. You have to have the certificate of a 100-year water supply. Some of the ones we had here were already under Arizona Water and were covered, so they didn't have to come up with that. Arizona Water certified that they had the 100-year water supply. We have another part, like when you approved Sundance 3, that one is on, the corner, where the Casablanca is, right across the railroad tracks, and that was, we looked at actually changing that and making it bigger lots and all that, but it didn't work out, and so they just went back to the original plat, the people that bought it. So they're working with the original plat, and Arizona Water's providing the water, so you'll be seeing some construction there. We issued a variance for it, or the council did, for the back part of the fence because the fence was encroaching, so they didn't have as much setback. So, that was existing one that was older that came back and is on the county's. You'll see the lots. They exist on the county's assessor's office. So that's why we have to honor them, because if you do anything that takes away some entitlement rights or things on property or reduce the value, you could face the 207?
207.
Yeah, 207 lawsuit for that, reduction in property as a municipality. So it's something we're careful of, so.
Commissioner Ball, and I can read straight from Section 3.6 of the subdivision code. Final plat and required supporting material shall conform to the design and engineering standards set forth in these regulations and to the conditions specified by the P&Z Council during pre-plat approval.
And Phil's got the portion of the book. It states that Section 3-6 talks about it. It has to meet. Is it in there?
Yeah, this section right here, this is the last portion of the preliminary plat, and the very first thing in the final plat procedures that goes on several pages is exactly what Nick just read, so.
So it's in there to make sure that, and that's in a current code. So.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Director Lopez, point of clarification. So when we say state law, what we saying is that under the current LDC, there is not the opportunity for the council, that is, or for the city to come back to, and I'm going to use was brought up is a 30-year-old plat. Is the city not in a position to also then amend that language to say that if a plat has not been acted upon within, I don't know, pick a number, 10 years, that they would be responsible for going back and resubmitting?
We'd have to research that. I don't know offhand.
I'd have to look at it a little more, but that would make sense because at the time of approval, the condition, assuming that is adopted at that time, then the applicant, the developer, is aware that this expires in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever that date would be. So that's something staff can look into.
Yeah.
Because, for example, you get a note, you get approval to start construction. That's not open-ended for forever till the end of time. There are time constraints in there. And to Commissioner Boland's point, that's what I was thinking, which is, and I get we're getting, ready to go through a general plan update, but this is another one where we're addressing one thing and the questions that are coming up about something else, which I recognize, but it would be helpful, at least for me, to understand that the city has the ability to do that, because I think it is important for the reasons that you've brought up and we're all aware of, particularly Commissioner Boland and everybody else who operates businesses, which is you go cyclic, and then all of a sudden here's a piece of property that while it was approved 20 years ago or 15 years ago or even 10 years ago. So it would be helpful to understand that and overall picture as we start looking at some of these other. So my other question is, Mr. Chair, Director, the city manager was there a discussion with staff about bringing it back to P and Z
For the,
for this
for the
extension? If
extension?
P and Z is going to approve the preliminary plat,
Right.
was there a conversation about bringing it back to the public body to have a request for this extension as opposed to, and I'll say it this way, an agency action or a city action by the city manager?
I guess because if there hasn't been any change to that preliminary plat and it's only 6 months, I think we'd be creating red tape. I don't know why we'd do that. I mean,
But for a year.
yeah, but I mean, that's the extension of trying to bring it up. We didn't talk about that. I mean, it just didn't seem like unless you guys are short of work and we're just trying to bring more things, I don't see what that would accomplish, in my opinion.
Director, what happens if it's a 14-month procedure? Who is going to approve the beginning of the 13th month? Is that going to go back to us? Or is it dead in the water at that point? Or, I mean, by what we're reading, it can't be extended beyond 12 months.
Right.
So then
Yeah.
it would come back to us as a new item?
It would come back to you to be reconsidered, I guess.
That's what I'm
Kind of like
saying.
and if there's any changes that had to be made, they'd have to make them. I mean, you could then look at it like a new development, really, but it would, within that time frame, nothing's changed so much that you would, not consider it anymore. But you certainly could then at that point deny it.
The city manager or designee
Mm-hmm.
cannot extend it beyond the 1-year period.
No.
That's clearly going to be stated that is a
So
only.
yeah, Commissioner Bolin, within section 3.5, if we read down, if a final plat has not been submitted within the specified period on all or a portion of the land area included in the pre-plat, a pre-plat must again be submitted for approval. And so that is going to go back to PNC.
Okay. It says 24 months up there from what I can read.
The second, that is for phase development. I'm reading the sentence immediately following the highlight.
Okay. I am trying to read it the sideways and I'm not very good
Well,
at
it's in your packet too, even it's a little smaller, but that the initial 12-month approval period, and then with the, if approved, 1-year, 12-month extension would be 24 months, which is reflected there in the bottom of the paragraph that Nick was calling out.
So it's a total.
Or in the event the city manager would not grant an extension.
Then it'd just be 12 months
Correct.
And to
for
clarify,
the original approval.
Mr. Chair, Director Lopez, just to clarify then, the city manager or their designee, it's a, for lack of a better way, it's a thumbs up or a thumbs down. For example, the applicant could request an extension and a change to the preliminary plat. Let me be very clear. That's my concern.
Yeah.
Let's be very clear about this. My concern is that a public body that has a public hearing, we approve a preliminary plat.
Right.
And then the applicant, for whatever reason, and the reasons you've enumerated are substantially valid, comes to the city and says, I need more time.
Mm-hmm.
And all I'm asking for is more time. Okay, that might seem reasonable. Maybe we don't cloud with red tape, but none of us like that.
Yeah.
But if it's, hey, we need an extension because we've decided that we want to reduce the setback.
No, it has to come back to you. We can't do that.
And I just want to make sure it's clear. This is simply an up or down on an extension of the existing approval. The city manager doesn't, and I have nothing against the city manager or their designee. It doesn't provide an opportunity for the developer, and I'll be this blunt, sneak something in under an extension that wouldn't come back before the public body.
Correct. No, because the 6 month exists already. All we're doing is adding another 6 months. We were just going to add another 6 months to the 6 months that was there. Rick suggested, why don't you just make it a year? It's cleaner, and then instead of just adding 6 months and another 6 months.
Okay, so maybe that just solved everything, because I'm looking at this, and I went back to the existing. It doesn't say city manager in the original language, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Wait, I just got, we've got a 6-month, and are we giving a 6-month extension or extension?
No, no,
Commissioner Boland, yeah, I can clear this up. There's two changes that are occurring. One is the approval for the extension only is being changed from Planning and Zoning Commission to City Manager or designated assignee. And then the second change is 6-month extension to 1 year, not two separate 6 months, 1 year.
So then they now have 18 months?
no, 24
2024
total.
total, if granted an extension by the city manager.
Doesn't have to grant.
They get a year. If they can't act on it, instead of only having an additional 6 months, they get a year total.
And,
Okay,
and
so
they
they
can't change it.
So we're going from a year to get the job done to 2 years for them to get the job done.
We're going from a year
18 months.
with the opportunity to have an extension that exists right now. We're just adding it, instead of 6 months, it's a year. Doesn't mean it's going to automatically get approved, but we're
Right,
just
but-
adding a little more time.
But we're giving them a year. We're not giving a little more time here. I was thinking that we had a 6-month original thing to apply, and then we're going to give them 6 months to make a total of a year. But what in fact we're doing is we've giving them a year. Now we're going to give them a second year based on a signature by the designated assignee or the city manager.
Right. Well, yeah, you do, instead of 6-month extension, you'd be providing another 6 months. It'd be a year extension.
But a total of 24 months.
Yes, if it's granted, because they get a year.
Well, but if
But
it's-
it's not an extension. The 1 year is just an allowed timeframe for the final plat. Right, yeah, so now we had in there was a 6-month additional time if they needed it. And then, so this just gives them a year instead of 6 months. That the city manager would have the opportunity to approve if they have a valid reason. You know, if it looks like they're not going to do anything and they just haven't even submitted, and, you know, he might say, no, you know, when you're ready, come back and resubmit. I mean, that's reality. We could do that. But if it's somebody that's working hard and they show us the cost went up $8 million in 3 months on infrastructure, and we like, okay, he says, I can't move forward. I'm waiting for these prices to stabilize. Then, you know, then we say, okay, well, you think, okay, and they ask for an extension. That's when they would probably.
We've had a chain restaurant that has applied to put a building up somewhere in town, and that's been some time ago, and they haven't broke ground. So is that a preliminary plat that we did for
No,
them?
no. That's
That was a final plat that we
no
did for them.
plat is strictly for subdivisions with houses.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it's
It doesn't
not-
apply to commercial.
It's
Uh-uh.
not commercial at all, okay.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
just
no.
trying to,
Yeah.
you lost me in there someplace.
I
guess my
apologize if I
mi-
didn't explain it right.
My mind's not doing, no, it's my brain. I lost it.
Phil's trying to bring up something that's probably going to clarify.
Yeah,
Hopefully,
just to give the Phil a little bit more time. That helps, that's helpful for me, Mr. Chair and Director, for that extension.
we just, you know, it's one of those things where the economy's slowed down a little bit, so we're just trying to help keep it going. The developments, and these would be developments that have assured water supply, and, you know, I mean, we don't, you know, we've got quite a few of those, but not as many as, you know, we hope, and I don't know if it's going to tighten up anymore. So these are, you know, we may run out in the future. So
Do we, and this might be a question, Mr. Chair, and the Director, for the attorney, do we lose something well, not lose something, do we have a concern that there's, for lack of a better way to describe it, criteria that the applicant would need to meet in order to submit to come before the planning and zoning for a request for extension, that those same requirements inure to the city manager, the designee? Because one of the things I would absolutely be concerned about is the "you did it for them but not for me" argument. And in a public process, that's pretty hard to, in a public process with a public vote, that's pretty hard to argue. Well, wait a minute, you went through the same process everybody else did. And again, I am not calling into question staff, the city, or anybody else.
Sure.
You do this, and one of the changes, and I think it's a substantive change, going to the city manager, is that's a behind a closed door decision. Do we lose something in translation? Or do we lose something, or are we concerned about that?
And that transparency.
I think because it can't be changed, it's not like that person is allowing they couldn't allow the plat or anything to be changed that you approved. So all we're talking is the time. And so, you know, the 6-month extension, I think we've used it once. And then others would have to resubmit. And so Phil?
Can everybody hear me okay on this?
Yeah.
Okay. This actually was just in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission this March. Now, the way the staff report was written, and this is for, I saw it earlier, Cross Creek Ranch 2, Dale Willis and Willis Properties Company. You guys are familiar with that. This was originally approved in June 9th of 2021. That had its 1 year, and then it came before this body, and I was trying to access some other files, but I'm having trouble getting to them, and it did get approved for a 6-month extension. They were trying to diligently get back in, but for reasons as they are, this is kind of granting trying to not differentiate between those who will be good platters and those who won't be. In this case, this is a good one. They did not make the 6-month extension. So what they did is they just resubmitted the preliminary plat from scratch because technically they missed the timing, and that's how this came back. It was a new submittal that came before here and was approved. And to show the commitment that these guys have already submitted the final plat and all the supporting engineering documentation. So in this particular case, this could have benefited them for a year because for whatever reasons, economics, engineering, I don't know exactly everything, but this could have benefited them in this particular case, and they are moving forward with the final plat. We have that, and it's been being reviewed by our engineering and planning staff. So I just wanted to share that. So that's kind of an example of this.
I have no further questions.
Gilbert, I think my concern is the verbiage with the city manager and taking out our authority. And again, it goes back to that visibility. I truly believe that should come back to us.
Yeah, if that's your pleasure, then, you know, we'll share it with the city council when we go before them.
Okay.
It'll probably keep their nose clean.
Yeah, because all we're talking about is an extension of time to help these projects go through. So, because if it gets close to, like Phil said, where it's going to the end, now we have to re-advertise and do all the things. So they're going to extend
Well,
the
in
time.
the end, they're asking for more time. Part of that time is time allotted for us to do what we need to do as well,
Yeah.
right? So it's kind of a give and take when you ask for more.
So so you're saying you want to change the plat and then review it again because so the extension, or you just want to be able to say we're going to grant the extension? So do you want to? So what you could do is grant the year, but not allow and keep it as the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it has to come back to you, but still give them the year. But it's like it exists now. Can we do that?
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with the commission making an amendment to say granting the year, but amending it to say as authorized by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Again, this is a recommending body, so council could disregard any amendments made, but
I think that would be a good recommendation.
Yeah, and it's up to you. I mean, you guys had to take that effort and see if you have support with the rest of the members.
All right?
Did you already, you still got to open the public hearing?
No, we have to close it for us and then open it to the public, right?
Okay, yeah.
All right, so in that case, are we done? Phil, we're good? Guys? I think so. All right, at that time, we'll open it to the public because this is a public hearing. No takers coming to the podium. So we'll close the public hearing and we'll entertain a motion. How would we phrase that?
Mr. Chair, I'll take a stab at it since I'm the
All right.
one who started all this. Mr. Chair, I make a motion to approve Cool PZ 23-06-22 with a change from the proposed language to read as follows. a proposed subdivision text amendment to the City of Coolidge subdivision code, Article 3, Section 3-5-F, to change a preliminary plat extension period from 6 months extension period to 1 year extension period as authorized by the Planning Commission, period.
If I might add, just planning and zoning commission, which is referred to in the code.
Because planning would be a department.
Works for me.
Can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
All right. Reports?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, we have a lot of activity on the solar, trying to get those guys going. We have like 11 Mile Corner Solar. If you go by 11 Mile Corner, it's just south of the Pinal County Fairgrounds, you'll see, they're working diligently to get that thing going. It's big solar facility. The one at Story Solar, which is north of Steel Road, just east of La Palma there, that one's going pretty strong. The substation we're working on, trying to get that finalized. We're working on every day. There's different things that come up on the electrical side that we deal with Stantec, and I'm on all the emails with Dennis. He was on vacation, so I approved a couple of changes on some of the codes that I can do after I consulted with Stantec, and that's within the UBC. And then what else? The other one is EDP Renewables, which is on the other side. It's just east of TransCanada. That one's got they've been putting the pile drivers in. They got permits for all that. We're just working through just the substation and getting that all squared away. So those are keeping us really busy. We're waiting for submittals on things that were approved before, like Hawk Hollow and some of that. So they're working on those plans, right, Phil?
Yeah, they probably should be submitting their major site plans for the clubhouse and their first phases probably within the next week or two. So we may have that in front of you in a couple of months here.
We're working closely with Cardin Hyatt and those guys on some, if you recall, there's a project, a PD called Brighton Village that is north of Bartlett. Actually, it's bigger. It goes all the way almost down to Randolph. It includes some portions of it that have cause for water. So we're going to be doing a PAD amendment to that because for some reason the cause is over commercial property. I don't know how that happened. Usually you don't put a cause on that. So they want to change it. They purchased it, I believe, and they just want to change that to housing and then move the commercial spot, which makes sense. I mean, we think that we're working on that with them. But Cardin Hyatt and Tyler Sewer and those developers have a lot of property. They are in control of Sandia, so hopefully they'll bring that one in for changes, pretty quick. But they don't seem to be in a hurry for it. So it's 11,000 units of approved lots with water, and so that's bigger than Coolidge. It's like twice our size. So it's big development. So they haven't moved on that, but that's out there and exists. The same group. And then we're also working on with them. They're sort of on different properties. We're working on a PATA with a pre-annexation development agreement down by IPAS, and so that's a different part. That's part of that group, but not all of them. So they tend to have 3 or 4 partners, and then this one over here has 3 of those or 2 of those guys, and this new one. And so it's really interesting how that works. But anyway, Nicola, just so you know, it's been in the paper. The Wall Street Journal had a report. Actually, the Business Journal, Phoenix Business Journal, had a story that Nicola sold the land on which the manufacturing facility is on to a REIT. It's and what they're doing is they're able to kind of like what the state did, I guess, with some buildings back in some years back. But the way the story goes is they had a 99-year lease for the building to be on that property. So all I did is give them additional, in my opinion, additional cash to operate. I think it was the story said 50+ million additional money, and so we're doing everything we can to help them, go forward with what we can do. So that's the latest thing. Mayor and I met with the new person, I forget his name, in charge of international manufacturing, and then the marketing person, and then Britton Worthen, their attorney. You know Britton since the beginning, so he's a very good person. So we're working on that. Procter & Gamble, I was on the phone with David Nieves yesterday, and they're working on getting their site plan finalized so I can bring it to you. And they present it to us, and then we'll get that package, and we can bring the site plan for Procter & Gamble to you to look at, we approve, and then we'll get it through. So they're still, from what we understand, they're on track to start moving dirt, break ground, probably beginning of 24. So he said it takes us a little while. We go through a lot of processes internally. We're a big company, but we move forward. He says, "Don't worry about it. We're gonna break ground." It's just we take a little longer ourselves internally. And I said, "Well, once you do get it to us, we're gonna move it really quickly as fast as we can through the process, so you can get started." We're very excited about that. So they said they made a nice comment that all of us together have been very good to work with, and they're very very happy to be here. So what am I forgetting? Marriott's still working on a lobby issue. They get that cleared up. I'm hoping they'll be back. Burger King assured me they're going to be here. They bought some of the equipment that goes on the building, and everybody's like, when are they going to come? So they've assured me. I've talked to the gentleman in charge of development for the franchisee. They have 400 of these restaurants. So he says, Gilbert, I tell you, we're trying to get the equipment. They gave me authorization to buy the equipment, and that means they're going to go forward. He says, or else they wouldn't let me buy this equipment. He says, but we're moving forward. We're going through the process. And I said, okay. Because also, if you remember, Burger King went through where they were working on the existing restaurants, trying to fix them up. That was a story in the Wall Street Journal and things where they were kind of making sure the restaurants were producing. And I think they closed some that weren't. So that worried us. So we called them right away. We're like, are we on that list or what? He goes, no. You guys are not on that list. That's back east in some communities where it just wasn't producing. And so, anyway, Phil, am I forgetting anything?
That's the broad strokes.
Yeah. And there's a lot, there's stuff we met with more of the,
Hotel?
yeah, the Marriott. I've talked to the owner. There was a rumor that I guess I shouldn't talk about rumors, but we want to make sure they were still moving forward. So I called the owner, and he assured me they're working on the lobby issue, and it might be also the economy, so looking to see what's going to happen. But they assured me they're going forward. He's just working with Marriott on the lobby that he had to change it, so they're changing their design. It's back to the architect, but hopefully we'll get that in. We're ready to issue at-risk grading permits. Get them going, so, yeah, the mayor asked me about that all the time, and Burger King, and so.
And the fence is up around Shopes?
Yes, yeah, they're moving forward with that. I got queries about that. That's for that
Gas
fuel
station?
island. Yeah,
Yep.
fuel island there. That'll be nice. Give us a place to fuel up. We're heading out of town to the south. When you forget, you're like, "God dang, I don't have gas." Turn around and come back. You just pull in there, fuel up, and go. So.
Mr. Chair, Director, you brought it up at the beginning. When's the last time we had any contact with NextEra about all the wonderful landscaping around the new sites and the existing site?
We've talked to them. They have to bring it up. We're trying to find, we thought the oleanders would be a good solution, but the irrigation, the prairie dogs have chewed through the plastic pipes, so they damaged some of that. So we're trying to either convince them to change it or use some of the Schedule 40 PVC with maybe bubblers instead, that are heavier. So they could probably still eat them, but they're maybe not as bad.
They'll chew through that too.
Yeah, it's a little harder pipe, but then the other pipe, the flexible stuff. And then at iPads, we're working. If you get down there, you'll notice the intersections of Hauser and Hannah Road. The lights are up. So they're not activated yet, but I think as soon as the traffic warrants it, because at one point ADOT was going to put just the arms up and not the heads, and I'm like, no. We have, we agree to pay for the power, but we need those up because these projects are coming that we can't talk about. They're going to be here real quick, and we're going to have a lot of cars here and a lot of semis. So anyway, there's the build grant at 15, almost 16 million. That's almost finishing up. We have other ones. We have money for Coolidge Avenue, over $5 million that was committed this budget to fix Coolidge Avenue going to the airport. And then also, we have appropriations in the budget through Representative Martinez, Shope, and also Cook. That got us about 700,000 for the intersection of Erica Road that goes in, and then we're applying for different grants for the road crossings. That'll go right into Procter & Gamble's site. And then we have an agreement with the county to work together to put those roads in. So the Erica Road, Vale Road alignment from the canal all the way up to Hannah, so they could use that road too. So that'll be an 80-foot frontage road with utilities in it from Global. We've been working with Global on all the locations. So anyway, that's where we are with that. There's a lot of moving parts, but it's good. Good moving parts.
Have we got Coolidge Avenue shut down right now?
Parts of it are on the other side, yeah. I mean, I sit in staff meetings, I drive up like, and I'm like, had to go around.
Turn around through
Yeah.
Nazarene.
Go through the subdivision, the cars are following me, got lost, I don't know. And so, and then the other one, when they start Coolidge on the other side, that'll be, I don't know if they'll do one lane. That'll be up to Ben and those guys to figure out how they're going to handle the traffic control. So, but yeah, they're expanding that to the south of Cabot, and then we're working diligently on the future, that regional park that'll be on the west side of Cabot, along that Coolidge Avenue. That'll be really nice. We get that going. They have a dog park, splash pads, all those things.
All right.
Yeah. So we're pretty excited about that. Sir.
Perfect.
Question,
Yes, sir.
have they checked for chemicals on the area that you're gonna use for the park on the west side of Cabot? Cause that's pretty close to that area that was part of the old airport, from what I remember way back in the 50s.
When we moved the ballpark,
Yeah, why we moved the ballpark to start with, but, I mean,
Yeah.
I just thought I'd ask that.
Chairman Halby, Commissioner Metcalf, or Vice Chair Metcalf, that'll be part of the environmental process, I believe. We have a company that's actually doing the landing strip was, they had cleaned it up one time, but I think what happened is percolated back up and just surfaced. So I remember I was on council and the numbers weren't over the limit, if I recall, but they were very close. And then we had a case where somebody didn't feel good, and then the Parks and Rec board decided they recommended shut down, and we did, which I don't know if that was the best thing to do at that point, but we did it and moved it over there. So this will bring it back because a lot of the people in Heartland were upset that they lost the regional park because they said we moved here because there was a big park here and now it's gone. So hopefully that'll help sell more houses, and it'll be right across the street from the big retention basin. It'll be nice. But yes, we certainly are aware of that. We don't want to have the same issue come up. And usually when it's irrigated property like that, and Shane, Commissioner Leonard, it gets pushed down. So the airport was different because they were spilling barrels of chemicals, and so those are different. When you get a runway, because I used to wait for John Lewis and Dennis Bagnall to come back from U of A, and that landing strip. So and there was a lot of chemicals there, and I remember too, the same as you do. I'm sorry, that didn't mean to be long-winded, but
No, that, I just thought I'd mention that.
yeah, absolutely. We were very aware of that because we drive by that park all the time. I'm like,
are you good?
Yep.
Can I do
What, you good?
just the?
oh, yes.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick, I'm just going to do broad strokes here, bullet points. You each got a copy of this. This is the schedule that we're going to be taking for the subject matter on the dates for reviewing this topic matter for the general plan for the next 6 months. The idea is to take from 6 to 7 to discuss the subject matter. Then at 7 o'clock, we'll go into whatever regular agenda that is on the normal Planning and Zoning Commission docket. So basically, this is just a graphic to show, here's the 2025 cover, and here's our little flyer combination mailer poster type of thing, and getting to the final document there, which would be approved in June of 2024 after it comes to this body for formal voting recommendation to the City Council, but that's all 2024 activity. So this is the 2023 stuff through January of 2024. And next week will be not next week, next month is going to be the land use. So, and that's the biggest section of the general plan. So just some broad strokes, and hopefully, we'll be able to have a nice discussion about it. So,
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Phil.
thank you.
You okay? You guys are okay with how we're doing that?
Yeah,
Okay, good. Just make sure.
yeah, I like it.
Good.
Like it. All right. So, call to the public. I didn't hear anybody answer. All right. How about we get a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
All in favor?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Let's go home, everybody.